Good morning, everyone. This is Paul Watzlawick talking to you from the East Asia Pacific Media Hub here in Tokyo. We're delighted today to have Undersecretary of Public Affairs and Public Diplomacy Tara Sonenshine with us. She will be taking your questions for the next 30 minutes. After a brief opening statement, we would ask that if you have any questions, please press 91 on your telephone handset. We will know that you have a question in the queue, and we will get to you as quickly as possible. With that, I'll turn it over to Undersecretary Sonenshine.
Good morning from Tokyo. Delighted to have the opportunity to hear from all of you. I'm here in Japan on my first trip to Japan as Undersecretary for Public Diplomacy and Public Affairs, which really means I get to focus not just on the traditional areas of security and political issues, but more of the people-to-people dimensions of our relationships with other nations. And in particular on this trip, focused on study abroad and international education and exchanges, and obviously here in this region, which is so important to the President, and you can see that obviously by the fact that he'll be making his first trip in the second term to the region in just a few days. So I'm delighted really to be in listening mode to hear your questions and explain how public diplomacy impacts our policy making and our relationships around the world. So thank you, Paul, and thank you to the Media Hub for setting this up.
Okay, our first question this morning will be from Korea, JTBC. Please go ahead, caller.
Hello, my name is Jung from JTBC from Korea. I would like to ask you a question about President Obama's overseas trip to Southeast Asia this week. Some experts pointed out that he has particularly chosen Cambodia, Myanmar, Thailand because those countries have a complicated relationship with the U.S. and with China. Basically, it's a way to counter China's rising power. And my question is that why President Obama chose Asian countries as the first place to visit after he was re-elected?
Well, firstly, let me say that the whole region has been important to the President leading up to this visit. I believe this is his fifth visit to Asia since becoming President. So I think he's been throughout many parts of Asia, and we see this visit as building upon the progress, in the case of Burma, certainly, that the Burmese government has made. They are at the beginning of a historic journey towards democracy and human rights, and we're going in part to encourage them to continue on that road. Much more needs to be done within Burma to realize the full potential of its people. So this is quite a significant moment in the history of this country, and it's really a milestone opportunity. So I hope that explains it. In regards to China, what I would say to you is we're committed to building a cooperative partnership with China. We always welcome China as a peaceful and prosperous country if it plays by international rules, and we see this as a way of elevating all economics in the region and making sure that everyone benefits in the strongest Asia-Pacific region that we can engender.
Thank you for your call. Our next question will come from 21st Century Business Herald in Beijing, who I believe is visiting the U.S. this week. Caller, go ahead.
Thank you. This is Wei Jiang from 21st Century Business Herald. I have two questions. One is, after loss of China Beijing in the presidential campaign, how will you predict the China and U.S. relations in Obama's second term? And the second question is, in terms of Asia policy, is there going to be any change in the following 4 years?
Well, firstly, I would say U.S. foreign policy in President Obama's second term will be characterized by continuity. And that is an opportunity for the next 4 years for the President to build on what was accomplished in the first 4 years. In terms of your question about China and leadership transition, we worked well with the previous leadership team, and we look forward to working with the new Chinese leadership. I think what you're going to see is a U.S. commitment to continue along the path of building a cooperative partnership with all the nations in the region. This is a very important region for us, and I think you're going to see that over the past 4 years, the patterns of interaction and communications that have helped manage these relationships will provide a foundation that we'll be building upon.
Thank you for your question. Our next question comes from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, from an online journalist and blogger. Caller, please go ahead with your question. Hello, Malaysia. Go ahead.
Yeah, my name is James Wong. What step has the U.S. taken to make the Japanese people in Okinawa more receptive to the presence of the U.S. troops?
Well, let me say that the U.S. military presence in Okinawa is strategically important, and we are going to continue to carry out our responsibilities with Japan under an existing pact so that we remain responsible as we are for the defense of Japan and the defense of the region. So our overall objective, I think you can say, is to sustain our presence and to meet our responsibilities as outlined in the treaty between our two countries.
Thank you for your question. The next question comes from the National Economic Weekly in Beijing. Caller, go ahead.
Good morning, Ms. Undersecretary. I would like to invite some more information about the latest progress of the negotiation over the U.S. budget deficit. Will the two parties move on to reach an agreement this month? Will the new administration carry out some new policies?
It's a very good question. It comes back to something that is really part of public diplomacy, and that is ensuring that people have economic stability and prosperity in their lives wherever they live. So I think what you can say is that the President's overarching objective is to sustain a stable economic environment and to have the economic openness and the resolution of disputes and debates about how to achieve economic prosperity such that we can work to be a strong economy at a time when everyone is interdependent and interlinked in terms of the global economy. So we're hoping that we'll be able to reach resolution on our own economic issues and certainly to shape the environment of the global economy such that regions like this region can benefit from the kind of stabilization in economic terms that every nation needs.
Thank you for your question. Our next question comes from Seoul, Korea, from the National Assembly of Research Service. Caller, go ahead.
Yeah, my question is two things. The first one is about the issues in Asia. I guess that one of the key issues in this area is regarding the territorial and historical instance or some kind of conflict issue among those states. In this case, I guess that somehow the United States or some point needs to take a position regarding those issues. Do you have any kind of program or policy or something like that? This is the first one. The second one is that the U.S. needs already last year tried to defend the policy, a sort of a tactic pivotal. That means some public diplomacy needs to get some specific program. Is there anything special program for those Asian pivot program?
Thank you very much. I think what you're mentioning is important, that we have short-term programs and a long-term vision. And let me work backwards. The long-term vision is to have a region where the rise of new powers can occur peacefully, where there's freedom to access sea, air, space, cyberspace, and where we can empower and encourage commerce, multinational fora to help promote shared interests. And so we're looking to create long-term an atmosphere that is enabling and empowering for citizens to be able to reach their individual potential. In the short run, we have a range of programs that span for public diplomacy: educational, cultural, academic, sports, music, all kinds of short-term and mid-term bridge-building projects that meet this longer-term objective of engaging citizens in productive ways.
Thank you for your question. Our next caller is from Jakarta, Indonesia, with the Jakarta Post. Caller, please go ahead.
Good morning. This is Johanna Ririhena from the Jakarta Post in Jakarta. My first question, what will be Obama's agenda at the East Asia Summit in Phnom Penh? My second question, Indonesia and the U.S. have reached a comprehensive partnership agreement in 2010, which provides an umbrella for deeper cooperation. One of the areas is to push for a more people-to-people contact included in education. But visa is still a big problem, a big obstacle for Indonesians to visit or study in the U.S. I would like your comment. Thank you.
Thank you. On the question of visas, this actually comes up quite often, and one of the areas that public diplomacy is now moving into is around travel, tourism, and access to one another's countries. And so we've been looking region by region at how to reduce the wait times for visas and how to encourage a more welcoming and beckoning approach so that people feel that they can travel and have access, which is very important if you're going to do public diplomacy. In terms of the upcoming meeting with ASEAN leaders, I think it's going to be about deepening relationships, including areas of trade, investment, energy. I think this is always an opportunity for leaders to look at big strategic and security issues, but also often to just be together in that face-to-face public diplomacy way. I know that they'll be focused on things like non-proliferation, maritime security, participating in the regional architecture that underpins the economies of the region. And so I think they're going to deal with the range of strategic and security issues that really come down to an individual's health, development, food security, energy, and the range of things that every nation is seeking.
Thank you for your question. Our next caller is calling from Beijing, a blogger. Mr. Jiman, if you're on the line, please go ahead.
Hello, good morning, Madam Tara Sonenshine. As you know, in these several decades, since the different values between our nations, we made too many blocks in information freedom, especially on the internet in mainland China. At present, the technology of information block is getting much higher than before. Under such circumstances, how can you carry out the policy of information freedom the U.S. government wants to push? That's my question.
Thank you, and I'm so glad you asked that, because at every opportunity, as a former journalist myself, I like to remind people how important it is for freedom of the press and for free, unfettered access to information. In my view, information is oxygen. It is the oxygen with which a society breathes. And so I think we have to keep pushing for openness, transparency, and the ability of reporters online or in traditional media to do their work, to bring information to the public, and to keep them from being harassed or imprisoned. This is an issue that we just constantly need to keep in the forefront of democracy and rights.
Thank you for your question. Our next caller is from GMA News in the Philippines. Caller, please go ahead.
Yes, good morning. I'd like to get your opinion on what would be the impact of the change of leadership in China in both Southeast Asia and Asian Pacific region. Thank you.
Firstly, let me just say I love the Philippines and Manila. I had the chance to cover the country many years ago in the Aquino Marcos era, so I'm delighted to have the opportunity to respond to you. In terms of this leadership transition in China, what I would say, first of all, is that it's going to keep China experts and Asia analysts busy for a while because we'll be all watching closely how it has unfolded. We've been pretty clear as a government that as China takes its seat at a growing number of international tables, it does need to assume responsibilities commensurate with its growing global impact and its national capabilities. So we will work with China to strengthen institutions from the G20 to APEC and enhance the ability of these institutions to address challenges. Getting the U.S.-China relationship right is not a simple task. It's complex. It's long-term. But we will look forward to working with whatever new Chinese leadership does emerge. And we've worked well in the past, so we have no reason to believe that we won't be able to work forward on some of these complex issues in the future.
Thank you for your call. Our next question comes from Beijing, the Global Times Chinese. Caller, go ahead. Beijing, Global Times Chinese, are you on the line?
Hey, Wei Lai. Hey, I would like to have your opinion on the situation in Syria. Do you think Obama is ready to take some actions in Syria? Because now the Middle East situation is not good, and the CIA director has some problem, and also the Israel has some strike in the Gaza area. So that kind of instability would like to have some impact on Asia security or Asia's development. May I have your view on that? Also, I would like to have your view on how, what kind of foundations or what kind of corporations would sincerely from American side to promote people-to-people diplomacy and public diplomacy in China, and some media or other, people could approach to them for help. Thanks.
Thank you. Our approach on Syria is firstly a multilateral approach, working with allies in the region and with others to reach a consensus about how to help the Syrian people to achieve what they deserve, which is freedom and their own rights as individuals. So the first thing is I'm here in Japan, which is a nation that has hosted in the past humanitarian assistance conferences, and the U.S. has been rather robust on providing humanitarian assistance. As we approach winter and the winterization, we are very keen to make sure that all the refugees in camps, whether they're in Jordan or Turkey or elsewhere, are well cared for, and to continue to work to make sure that there is a new Syria, and that requires cooperation and collaboration with others, and this is a complex issue being worked on every second of every day.
Thank you for your call. We will also take calls from those of you who are still on the line, so please don't get off on us. We've been waiting for quite a while. The next question comes from Malaysia, from the University of Kebangsaan, one of our academic participants today. Are you on the line still?
Yes, I'm on the line. Yeah, Madam Secretary, I have two questions. One is, you did mention about President Obama's public diplomacy and the need to improve it. May I focus on the internal dimension of your public diplomacy? What steps have the State Department taken to improve, in terms of training, the cultural sensitivity of American diplomats who serve in foreign lands, for instance, especially in the region that I come from in Southeast Asia? And number two is, would you attempt to identify what are the greatest threats to U.S. national interests in Asia at the present time, and what do you think is the role of ASEAN in terms of ASEAN's efforts to be central in the multilateral security process? How do you see the U.S. being co-opted into this system of multilateral security in Asia with ASEAN centrality as the focus? Thank you.
Thank you. Your first part of your question is quite interesting, and it's the internal development of public diplomacy as a field. And we are expanding constantly the number of public diplomacy officers who serve around the world and really are building the cultural bridges to ensure that we are listening to foreign publics and engaging with them either in traditional ways or online ways. So the Secretary of State has made it very clear from the beginning of her term that we need 21st century statecraft. We need to be out there every second of every day, working not only to convey our narrative, but to really be engaged in listening and hearing from citizens everywhere. So you see a lot of global chats and online dialogues and calls like this one where we're really hearing from people around the world directly. So I would say that's very important. In terms of threats and challenges, I think I like to see it as challenges and opportunities. We have enormous opportunities in the educational arena to have more engagement, more study. Right now we have about 775,000 international students in the United States and many students going overseas, but we want to make that a robust pillar of our economic statecraft and of our national security architecture. So that is really on the horizon as people-to-people ties become so central to explaining who we are and engaging in the conversation with other citizens around the world.
Thank you for your call. Madam Secretary, the previous caller from China specifically asked about China-U.S. people-to-people exchanges. Did you want to elaborate on that?
Sure. I had the pleasure in first arriving at the State Department in the spring of going to lead the CPE delegation working on people-to-people ties with China. We focused on areas such as education, gender. We've set up some exchange programs about topics as diverse as breast cancer awareness in both countries. We have a great deal going on the sports front with athletes going back and forth, with physical education, teaching, and with the wider issues of learning, even philanthropy sectors in both countries. So a very full people-to-people set of exchanges, programs, initiatives, and projects emanate from those CPE dialogues.
Thank you. Our next caller comes from Seoul, Korea. A second question again from JTBC. Caller, if you're on the line, please ask your question.
Hello. I have two questions. First is, does the Obama administration plan on operating any new foreign policy in his second term in terms of Korea-U.S. relations? My second question is, what about Obama's stance on North Korea? What would he enhance the most in second term in regards to the policies against North Korea? Thank you.
Thank you. As I think I indicated at the beginning, I think the word is continuity and building upon, in the case of Korea, strong relationships and moving forward on the range of economic issues, trade, investment, and all of the issues that bind our countries. I think on North Korea, the work continues to move in terms of focusing on the issues that concern all of us around proliferation, around the issues of nuclear inspections or other forms of ensuring that the neighborhood around North Korea remains safe and secure and prosperous.
Thank you for your call. Our next caller is from Australia, ABC Radio Australia. If you're on the line, please go ahead.
Oh, hello. Thanks for this. My first question is at the East Asia Summit next week, with President Obama there meeting with the leaders of ASEAN, Japan and China. Will that be a good chance to reinforce the need for a diplomatic solution to the conflicts over the East China and South China Seas? And how active would Barack Obama be in that process? And secondly, a White House official in charge of human rights has said the U.S. is urging the Cambodian leader Hun Sen to take concerns over human rights abuses within Cambodia seriously. rather than continue business as usual. Is that a message that President Obama will take to Hun Sen next week? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I think all of these issues that you've mentioned will no doubt come up as leaders come together in order to really figure out how to promote regional cooperation. What we keep seeking is the peaceful resolution of disputes and adherence to human rights and international law. So for us, although in the specific cases you mentioned, we don't take a position on competing sovereignty claims, we do want the parties themselves to be able to resolve these issues and to be able to move forward in a peaceful manner. I think the second part of your question was Cambodia. We've engaged, as you know, constantly with all of the East Asia region, and the President will participate again in Cambodia next week. What I can say, certainly from a public diplomacy standpoint, is that our engagement with the Cambodians on a bilateral basis is very important, and the thrust of a message that we always say about the importance, for example, of free and fair elections, the promotion of human rights. And so Cambodia is the host of these important summits and diplomatic gatherings is very important both bilaterally and multilaterally so that we can talk about all of the issues, including human rights abuses that may be committed within Cambodia's borders.
Thank you for your call. We have online journalist and blogger from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. If you're on the line, please go ahead.
Good morning again. What is the progress of the Trans-Pacific Partnership TPP negotiation?
Thank you. Here in Japan, what I can say is that it really is up to the Japanese people to decide for themselves on TPP. Certainly, we would welcome their membership, but we want this to be a decision that's left to Japan to decide what's in its economic interest.
Madam Secretary, I believe the caller also, being from Malaysia, probably is interested in the regional aspects of TPP and the general advantages it brings to the region.
What I can say on the macro level is really what I think we all believe, which is we need open, transparent, economic opportunities that encourage trade and investment in one another's countries. We all understand we live in a globally, economically interconnected and interdependent world. So we are constantly looking to promote relationships that lead to all boats rising. We don't see a zero-sum game in this economic arena because when one nation prospers economically, all nations prosper. So this is something that is a basic thrust of our approach to the economic cooperation that we intend to help forge across these regions.
Thank you for your call. This will be our last question as we are about to end our time for the day. We have a call from Hainan, online forum Tianyi.cn in China. Caller, are you on the line?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Undersecretary, my name is Yong Chen from the Tianyi Community Network. I would say in Beijing that you saw the American cultures like steering every vegetable is fragrant, be mixed, but each kind of the vegetable will never lose its essence. And that comes to question, can China and the United States achieve common value in economy, education, and culture, and what is measure to promote it? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Over the past 4 years, the U.S. has developed patterns of interaction and mechanisms for communications that I think have been very important in helping to manage U.S.-China relations, and we'll plan to continue those. There are many cultural programs, educational programs, people-to-people programs, and economic programs that help to promote the investments that we want to see in an open and transparent China that is able to contribute to the global economy. So we are cooperating across a range of issues. Certainly in education, we've seen the increase in the number of Chinese studying in the U.S., which was reported this week in the Open Doors report. So we're very eager to make sure that we meet our commitment to have 100,000 scholars to China, and we welcome international education really from all of the nations represented on this call. So thank you all for your time and attention. It's wonderful that our folks here have been able to set this up, and I look forward to interacting with you in the future.
Thank you, Madam Undersecretary. I would like to say to everyone on the call that we have a very important speech tomorrow by Secretary Clinton in Singapore on economic statecraft, and that speech will be available in real time, live stream throughout the region at 10:30 Singapore time, 11:30 Japan time. So we will be sending details to all of you later today on how to access that speech and download the video when it becomes available. Thank you again for your time, and we look forward to the next event.